Dubai doesn't make mistakes. People do. Jessica arrived thinking she was alone. She wasn't. Michael appeared when the danger began. Not before. Not after. Exactly then. That's how you know this wasn't fake. By sunrise, one of them would be lying. One would be hunted. And one secret would turn love into a weapon. So tell me, if the person who saves you was never meant to, would you still call it love? Or would you call it forbidden? The city rose out of the horizon in clean lines and deliberate light. Dubai measured, controlled, exact. Jessica arrived believing she could blend into its scale. A city large enough to dilute intention. Busy enough to forget faces. She was wrong. From the moment her flight landed, time felt misaligned, as though the rhythm of the city was slightly ahead of her own. Not rushed. Not slow. Just waiting. She moved through the airport with purpose, careful not to hesitate, careful not to draw attention. People who want to disappear learn that discipline quickly. Jessica had practiced it well. Outside, traffic flowed with effortless precision. Glass and steel reflected a version of the city that felt flawless, almost rehearsed. During the drive, she noticed the mirrors more than the road ahead. Movement lingered where it shouldn't have. Cars that stayed too long before falling back into the stream. Fear has a way of sharpening patterns. Her phone vibrated once. No contact name. No number. Only a message. You're late. Her fingers tightened around the phone. Late suggested expectation. Expectation suggested planning. She deleted the message. Some warnings arrived disguised as mistakes. Minutes later, the car slowed unexpectedly. Then stopped. No dramatic failure. No visible cause. Just silence. Jessica stepped out, scanning the road, empty, exposed, too open. The heat pressed down, heavy and watchful. That's when Michael spoke. Calm. Close. He stood near the rear of the vehicle as though he belonged there. No urgency in his posture. No confusion in his expression. He addressed her by name. Jessica hadn't introduced herself. She should have left then. Every instinct said to step away, to create distance. But relief can be dangerous when it arrives too smoothly. Michael fixed the problem without effort. No hesitation. No trial and error. When the engine restarted, he didn't ask where she was headed. He told her. And he was right. As they drove, Jessica noticed how little he needed to look around. His attention stayed forward, confident as though the city was already mapped in his mind. Familiarity like that isn't learned quickly. They reached her destination sooner than expected. Michael didn't follow her inside. He smiled, restrained, intentional. "We'll talk again," he said. Not a suggestion. A certainty. Inside her room, the silence felt heavier than before. Jessica locked the door and leaned against it, replaying every second. The message. The breakdown. The timing. Coincidences rarely arrive alone. Her phone vibrated again. Different number. You shouldn't trust him. She stared at the screen longer this time. Trust implied choice. Choice implied she had more control than she felt. Jessica crossed to the window. The city stretched endlessly below, lit, awake, indifferent. Somewhere within it, Michael was moving freely. People like him always do. This is the moment most stories pretend doesn't matter. The quiet pause before consequence. Jessica doesn't leave. She doesn't ask questions. She doesn't run. She stays. And that decision, small, reasonable, almost invisible, is what sets everything else in motion. Because in a city built on precision, nothing unfolds without intention. And Michael was never an interruption. By morning, the city had settled into its rhythm. Traffic resumed. Meetings began. Towers reflected the sun as if nothing had shifted. For Jessica, everything had. She replayed the previous night with careful precision, examining each moment for error. There were none that explained Michael's timing. Only gaps. The first message remained unanswered. So did the second. Silence can be a negotiation. She wasn't sure who was winning. Later that day, She saw him again. Not searching. Not surprised. Waiting. They met in a place designed to impress high above the city, glass walls open to the horizon. From there, Dubai looked flawless. Distant enough to feel unreal. Michael spoke easily. Too easily for someone she'd just met. He asked questions that sounded casual but landed precisely. Where she'd been. How long she planned to stay. What she was hoping to find. Jessica answered selectively. Truth, trimmed down to what was safe. He listened without interrupting, a habit that suggested control rather than curiosity. When the helicopter lifted, the city fell away beneath them. Palm Jumeirah stretched into the sea, perfectly shaped, undeniably deliberate. Up there, perspective changed. Distance softened fear. Height gave the illusion of safety. Jessica noticed how relaxed Michael was. Not impressed. Not distracted. As if he'd seen this view many times before and for reasons that had nothing to do with beauty. He spoke about the city in fragments. Not facts. Patterns. Who moves freely? Who doesn't? Which routes stay unnoticed? That was when attraction crept in, quiet, unwelcome, undeniable. Connection is rarely logical. It arrives when vigilance weakens. Later, the drive through Sheikh Zayed Road felt almost intimate. The city moved around them in smooth, luminous lines. Jessica caught herself watching Michael instead of the road. Not his face, his reactions. He noticed details before they happened. Signals, shifts, pauses. Instinct sharpened by experience. When she asked him how long he'd lived in Dubai, he paused. Just long enough. Long enough, he said. Answers like that aren't meant to inform. They're meant to end questions. As evening approached, the sense of being followed returned stronger this time. Not a presence. A pattern. Michael adjusted their route without explanation. Jessica didn't ask why. Trust doesn't always begin with belief. Sometimes it begins with exhaustion. They reached the marina after dark. Yachts rested quietly, lights reflecting across the water like fractured signals. Out there, surrounded by movement and noise, the world felt momentarily contained. Michael spoke again, this time without performance. He said some places look open but are controlled. Others look chaotic but hide freedom. He didn't say which Dubai was. Jessica wondered if he already knew the answer. Or if he was still deciding. As they stood there, the city watching from all sides, something settled between them. Not safety. Not certainty. Understanding. The kind that forms when two people recognize danger in each other. And don't step away. That night, Jessica received no more messages. No warnings. No threats. The silence felt deliberate. Because someone had stopped watching her. And started watching them. And Michael, for the first time, didn't look like a coincidence anymore. The first sign of trouble wasn't loud. It never is. It was absence. A route Michael avoided without explanation. A street he chose not to enter. A pause where confidence had been effortless before. Jessica noticed. People who learn to disappear notice when others do the same. The city, which had felt expansive only hours earlier, began to contract. Paths narrowed. Options closed. They were no longer moving through Dubai. They were being guided around it. The warning arrived without threat. A call. No voice. Just sound, distant traffic, footsteps, then silence. Michael ended the call immediately. Too quickly. That was the moment Jessica understood something had shifted. He didn't explain. He accelerated. Traffic blurred as they moved into denser streets, lights streaking past in precise lines. Michael didn't check the mirrors. He didn't need to. Jessica felt it, the pressure, the alignment, the sense of being framed rather than chased. They abandoned the car near a metro entrance. No hesitation. No debate. Underground, the city sounded different. Echoed. Compressed. Michael moved ahead of the crowd, never pushing, never slowing. He positioned Jessica without touching her, placing bodies between her and open space. This wasn't improvisation. It was familiarity. She wanted to ask him how he knew. She didn't. Questions can be liabilities when answers confirm fear. On the platform, he finally spoke. We don't stay long. Not we shouldn't. We don't. The train arrived. Doors closed. Movement resumed. For a moment, the danger felt suspended, sealed behind glass and speed. That illusion lasted exactly one stop. Michael changed course again. Another exit. Another corridor. Jessica noticed others adjusting two small shifts, mirrored timing, eyes lifting in unison. Patterns don't form accidentally. By the time they surfaced near the marina, night had settled completely. Water reflected the city in broken light, unstable and beautiful. Michael secured a boat with a single call. No names exchanged. No questions asked. Out on the water, sound fell away. The city receded into glow and silhouette. Jessica finally spoke. How long have you known this would happen? Michael didn't answer immediately. Long enough, he said. Again. That answer landed differently now. He admitted there were things he hadn't anticipated. Not the attention. Not the pressure. Her. That confession felt rehearsed and sincere enough to be dangerous. The boat slowed. The city watched from a distance. Michael looked back toward the shoreline, calculating. Not escape. Timing. This was never supposed to involve you, he said. Not apology. Not reassurance. Information. Jessica understood what he wasn't saying. He had expected trouble. He had prepared for it. He just hadn't planned to care. That realization tightened something between them, attraction sharpening into risk. When they returned to land, the silence resumed. No messages. No calls. That was worse. Because whoever had been watching had changed strategy. And now they were no longer reacting. They were waiting. Distance changes the way fear behaves. As the city faded behind them, its constant noise thinning into silence, the tension didn't disappear. It concentrated. The road into the mountains was narrow and deliberate, cutting through terrain that resisted control. Here, Dubai's precision gave way to raw space rock, wind, and open sky. Jessica noticed Michael driving more slowly now. Not cautious. Intentional. He chose routes that avoided signals. He let long stretches pass without speaking. Silence, when used carefully, becomes a language. They reached the foothills by late afternoon. The air shifted cooler, thinner, less forgiving. Out here, there were no crowds to disappear into. No reflections to hide behind. Just distance. The trek began without ceremony. No explanation. No reassurance. Footsteps echoed against stone, each sound carrying farther than expected. Every pause felt exposed. Jessica realized how much of her confidence had been borrowed from movement. From escape. Here, there was nowhere to go quickly. Michael finally spoke as the terrain rose. This is where it slows down, he said. She didn't ask what it was. They climbed until the city became an idea rather than a presence. Signals weakened. Time loosened. That's when truth starts to surface, not because it's safe, but because it's heavy. Jessica spoke first. She told him enough to sound honest. A past shaped by proximity to the wrong people. Mistakes framed as necessity. A decision to leave before consequences arrived. It was a version of the truth. Clean. Contained. Michael listened the way he always did, without interruption, without reaction. Then he spoke. He talked about movement. About living in places where stillness meant vulnerability. About learning when to stay invisible, and when to be seen. He didn't name what he did. He didn't name who he was. But the outline was unmistakable. As evening approached, the sky shifted into muted color. The temperature dropped. They made camp where the ground flattened and the horizon widened. Firelight softened edges. Shadows stretched. Out here, the world felt reduced to essentials. Breath. Heat. Proximity. Jessica noticed how close Michael stayed, not protective, not distant. Balanced. Trust doesn't arrive as a declaration. It arrives as permission. For a moment, the danger felt remote. Not gone. Just watching from a distance. That's when Jessica noticed the absence again. No messages. No calls. No pressure. Michael noticed it too. Silence, this complete, was not accidental. They're waiting, he said. Not fear. Assessment. Waiting meant leverage. Waiting meant patience. Jessica realized then that this pause wasn't safety. It was positioning. Night settled fully. Stars filled the sky with indifferent clarity. Under that vastness, choices felt smaller and more final. Jessica asked him the question she'd been avoiding. If this ends badly, she said, who does it end badly for? Michael didn't answer right away. For whoever hesitates, he said. That night, sleep came in fragments. Dreams stayed close to the surface. Jessica woke once to find Michael already awake, watching the dark beyond the fire's reach. Not scanning. Anticipating. This was the moment everything balanced on. Isolation had stripped away noise. Connection had sharpened risk. And somewhere beyond the mountains, the city was still awake. Adjusting. Because when pursuit stops, it's rarely because it's over. It's because the trap is set. The desert doesn't announce danger. It holds it. Night had fallen fully. Stars pressed close, indifferent, endless. Sand stretched in silence, broken only by their footsteps. Jessica and Michael moved carefully, the firelight behind them a fragile boundary. Every sound echoed. Every shadow lengthened. They had escaped the city's observation, or so it seemed. But the desert carries its own witnesses: wind, rock, the subtle signs that someone else had passed before. Michael stopped suddenly. The movement was sharp enough to startle her. Do you hear that? He asked. Jessica didn't. Not at first. Then the faintest crunch, sand shifting far off. Too measured to be natural. Too deliberate to be coincidence. He gestured, silent, then spoke. Someone is close. Always has been. Not a warning. A fact. Jessica's breath hitched. They were not alone. And the one they had trusted most was not entirely transparent either. She studied Michael, searching for cracks in his calm. The way he watched the horizon, the subtle tension in his shoulders, it was enough to tell her he was hiding something. Something critical. The fire cast faces into half-shadow, half-truth. She felt the distance between them collapse and expand at the same time. Attraction mingled with suspicion. Michael finally broke the silence. You weren't supposed to be here, he said. Not angry. Not accusatory. Simply stating reality. Jessica stopped moving. Words failed her. This wasn't about love. This was about survival, hers, his, and something neither had fully grasped yet. I didn't know, she whispered. He studied her. Measured. Calm. Doesn't matter what you knew, he said. Only what you do next. The desert pressed against them, empty, unyielding, and patient. Here, the truth had no disguise. No distractions. No escape. A flash of movement caught her eye. Too sudden, too precise. Someone or something was approaching. Michael reacted before she could even process it. A shift of weight, a hand near a concealed pocket, eyes narrowing into night vision. This wasn't a rescue. It wasn't a chase. It was a test. Jessica realized then that Michael's care had never been for her safety alone. He was protecting a secret, maybe even himself more than anything else. The wind carried faint words. The kind you don't want to hear in open space. Warnings whispered from a distance she couldn't place. And then, the truth landed between them like a stone striking sand. You've been part of this from the start, Michael said. His voice steady, but not without weight. Not by choice, but by design. Jessica froze. She had suspected manipulation before, glimpses, odd timings, subtle nudges, but never this directly. The desert stripped illusions. The quiet made every omission glaring. Every half-truth exposed. You were never the target, Michael continued. Not really. You were a contingency. Jessica's heart hitched. Her trust faltered. Her fear sharpened. The silence returned, but heavier now. He hadn't finished. He wouldn't. Out here, under infinite stars, she understood the first rule of survival. Truth in the desert is not given. It's revealed. And what had been waiting for them all along was not danger as she imagined it. It was revelation. The kind that demands action or consequence. She looked at Michael, and for the first time, she wasn't sure if he was an ally or another threat. The desert wind whispered again, carrying possibility, risk, and inevitability all at once. This was the point where everything shifted. Where every decision from now on would be measured in seconds and consequences, not words. And Jessica realized. The chase was no longer about running. It was about choice. The city's glow had vanished behind them, leaving darkness that was almost absolute. No landmarks. No safety. Just wind, shadows, and the sense that the world had shrunk to a single, sharp edge. Jessica moved carefully. Every step measured. Every glance deliberate. The desert had stripped away distraction. Nothing could hide. Not mistakes. Not intentions. Michael led the way. Steady. Controlled. Confident, but guarded like someone carrying a weight too heavy to show. "You need to know who we're really dealing with," he said. Not a warning. Not advice. A statement of fact. Jessica listened, trying to anticipate what he would reveal. But anticipation is a dangerous thing. It sharpens fear without answering it. The truth hit first as a whisper, then as a wave. Jessica was not the target. Her heartbeat stuttered. Not her. Then, like a blade sliding across stone, the realization landed. Michael was. Everything fell into a different pattern now. Every careful step. Every glance. Every hesitation. Every message. Every calculated movement. It had never been about her survival. It had been about him, and she had been collateral. Michael didn't flinch as he revealed this. No anger. No pleading. Only the hard, steady reality that survival is never fair. Jessica's mind raced, trying to reconcile trust with truth. All the subtle nudges. All the carefully guided routes. Everything had been shaping her, guiding her toward this moment. Her instincts screamed to run. But running wouldn't matter anymore. Because now she understood the trap was set. And she was inside it, whether she wanted to be or not. Michael turned to her, his face calm but unreadable. "Everything from now on," he said, "depends on decisions, not chance." The wind whipped around them. Every shadow seemed to move with intention. The desert had become a stage, and they were the final actors. A distant light flickered, too controlled to be accidental. Movement in the dunes hinted at strategy, not pursuit. They were expected. Calculated. Jessica realized the weight of her own choices. The line between ally and enemy had blurred. And the person she thought she understood completely was still a puzzle she couldn't solve. "You've been asking questions," Michael said, voice low. "Now it's time for answers. Not all of them. Not yet. But enough to survive." He paused. Measured. Then added. "Because if you make the wrong choice, you won't just lose me. You'll lose yourself." Silence returned. Dense. Heavy. Filled with possibilities she couldn't yet name. The desert pressed in. The trap was visible now, not in walls or barriers, but in every glance, every step, every careful breath. Every decision mattered. Every hesitation could be fatal. Jessica understood the first rule of the real game. Survival isn't about who moves fastest. It's about who knows the target. And who can live with the truth when it finally arrives. The wind carried a whisper across the dunes. It wasn't her name being called. It was his. Michael's name. The realization hit harder than any threat they had faced. He had been hunted all along. And she had been walking beside the danger, thinking it was hers. This was no longer a chase. It was inevitability. And for the first time, Jessica questioned not just trust, but loyalty, love, and instinct itself. Dawn arrived slowly. Not golden, not gentle. Just pale light stretching across the horizon, brushing the desert into sharp lines and long shadows. Jessica and Michael stood at the edge of a ridge, the city far behind them, the trap fully visible in the dunes below. Every decision they had made led here. Every half-truth. Every misstep. Every suppressed fear. Michael looked at her. Not pleading. Not commanding. Just waiting. "Your choice," he said. Simple. Final. Jessica realized the weight of the moment, the kind of weight that bends instinct and morality together. If she acted wrong, one life would end. If she hesitated, both could. The desert wind carried the faintest hint of movement below. Patience, calculation, inevitability. The hunter was patient. The city had taught it well. She remembered the first message. "You're late." Now she understood, it had never been about her timing. It had been about survival, precision, and control. Michael spoke again. "Whatever you do, it will define us. It will define me." Jessica's pulse quickened. Not from fear alone. From recognition. From desire. From the dangerous intimacy of standing on the edge with someone she had learned to trust and suspect in equal measure. She could see the consequences in the dunes below. The trap laid bare. The enemy waiting. Her mind raced through every option. Every escape. Every betrayal. Every risk. And then it crystallized. There was no perfect choice. Only necessary ones. She stepped forward. Not impulsively. Not recklessly. With intention. Michael mirrored her movement. Calm. Ready. Vulnerable only in trust. The desert shifted around them, wind, sand, shadows like a living witness. And in that moment, Jessica realized the hardest truth of all. Love, loyalty, and survival rarely align. Sometimes, one must be sacrificed for the other. She glanced at Michael. His gaze met hers, steady, unwavering. "I'm ready," she whispered. The words weren't for him. They weren't for herself. They were for the choice, the consequence, the inevitable collision of truth and danger. Michael nodded. Not encouragement. Not fear. Acknowledgement. The world contracted to seconds and decisions. Everything else was irrelevant. And then the first move came. The choice was made. The desert didn't cheer. It didn't judge. It observed. And it waited for what came next. Jessica understood something she hadn't before. Courage is not absence of fear. It's knowing the cost. And moving anyway. The ridge fell silent again, the wind the only witness. But the consequences had begun to unfold. And in that silence, one truth remained undeniable. Nothing was over. Nothing would ever be the same. The sun rose over the desert, pale and indifferent. Shadows shrank. Light revealed what the night had hidden. Jessica stood alone on the ridge. The wind carried silence, not the absence of sound, but the weight of it. The echoes of decisions, choices, and consequences lingered in the air. Michael was gone. Not missing. Not hidden. Gone. She didn't know if he had survived, or if he had sacrificed himself. The truth felt unnecessary. Some answers are dangerous. The city below remained unaware. Its towers gleamed, traffic flowed, life continued as though nothing had happened. But Jessica knew differently. She had learned the cost of knowledge. The weight of intention. The precision of survival. Every message. Every step. Every carefully guided choice, it had all led here. To this quiet. This reckoning. Her phone vibrated once. No number. No name. No instruction. Only a single word. Remember. She stared at it. And for the first time, she understood. Some stories end not with resolution, but with awareness. The kind of understanding that changes who you are. And who you will become. Jessica looked toward the horizon. The city, the desert, the mountains all still. Waiting. Watching. Judging. Dubai had witnessed everything. It remembered. And so would she. The desert wind shifted again, carrying a promise she could not yet name. Love, loyalty, and survival are never simple. They are choices. And every choice has a cost. Jessica took a breath. Long, measured. Heavy. And she moved forward. Because endings are never endings. They are the beginning of consequences. And some truths are forever forbidden.